Hey guys, welcome back to Color Connection with Amber. In this episode, we'll add terrific texture to our projects with embossing paste. I'm going to color the embossing paste with some reinkers, and if you saw Lydia's video, she shared 4 different ways to color your embossing paste, so I'll have a link to that up above so that you can check that out as well. We're using the color palette from the April 2020 Inspiration Challenge hosted by Nicole Watt this month. Let's get started. I'm going to be using Bold Greetings die set, which is one of my favorites. I love the modern style of the font. Some classic cinnamon strips and cinnamon strips 2, which is new. 2 of my favorite stencils, the stone wall stencil. I love the organic pattern of that. And then also bubble wrap stencil, which is a little more structured. I'm also going to use Precious Blooms stamp and die bundle. And this is a unique die because both of the blooms are die cut together. We'll use this stamp set 2 different ways to create 2 different looks of blooms, and I'll show you the insert a little bit later in the video. And I'm going to use Cotton Candy and Sand Dunes, and then also Coral Berry and Peach Perfect. This will keep us with the color palette, but will give us a slight color variation for a little bit more interest in our blooms. I'll also use the Rock Collection Oval ink family. And if you're new to Color Connection with Amber, it's all about using the color palette from Altenew's Monthly Inspiration Challenge. So that's the palette that we'll be focused on for this episode and the next one. I'm also going to use Morning Frost, Lava Rock, and Jet Black reinkers. Here is the embossing paste, which is a really large jar. Mine got a little bit melted by accident from my heat tool, but the paste is beautiful still inside. It has a really creamy texture, almost like a mousse or a buttercream frosting. It's super, super light and airy, and a little goes a long way. So I'm going to start off with a light color, I want a light gray, and I'm using the Morning Frost. And you can see that I've just popped in 2 drops of Morning Frost, and I'll get that mixed in with the palette knife. Now, deciding on how much embossing paste you need, there's a little bit of trial and error with that. So play around with the saturation of the color that you're going to mix and the amount that you need. If you end up mixing too much, just create several panels and set them aside for later. I've added a few more drops, and you do want to just add your drops slowly and then use a palette knife or maybe a rubber spatula or something that you have to just mix that paste together. If you don't have any ink pad reinkers like I used today, you could also use the metallic ink sprays. Pour a little bit of that into your embossing paste. You could use the watercolor brush marker refills, or even just squirting the pigment directly from the watercolor brush onto your surface. You could also use the artist marker refills as well. Just drop a few drops of that into there. Or you could probably even mix up some watercolor from your pans and use that as well to color your embossing paste. There's lots of options. So I've taped my Stonewall stencil to the back of my piece of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White, and I should mention I stepped away for about 15 minutes to help my daughter with her homework, and I got a little bit of a crusty piece, like it started to dry. So you can see that there, I have a little crusty piece on there. So I'm just putting that off to the side, and you can see that the paste got a little bit thicker while I had stepped away as well. Still works really well and is easy to blend, but if you're wondering why it looks a little different, that's why. So I've just spread it over. I wasn't trying to keep it really smooth per se because I want it to mimic a stone surface. And here I've added Lava Rock to that same already colored paste, and then I added Jet Black. Now, I do really love the color of this. Adding the Jet Black made it a little bit of a cooler black or really dark gray, graphite. Had I stayed with the gray reinkers, it would have been more of a warm gray. Now, I really like this black color. I was surprised that it got as saturated as it did. I'm just using the bubble wrap stencil and spreading that over, and I did get a little crusty piece in there as well. So I'm just popping that off to the side. And you can see that it's gotten, the texture has changed of the paste. It spreads really smoothly, but it's a little more liquidy because I've now added so much of the reinker to it. Here I didn't want to waste the paste that was already on the stencil, so I'm just going to pop it on another card panel and just do a print with it. and I'll set that off to the side. You do want to make sure that you clean your stencils and your tools right away, or have a bucket of water that you can place it in. Here is the insert for Precious Blooms, and I do like to check out the insert. There's so much inspiration on the inside, and then also there are color suggestions, and then sometimes there's also suggestions of what you can pair this with. One of the things that I like to look at is sometimes I struggle with how to arrange my leaves, and so I might look at the inside to see how those are arranged, and then of course you have the layering guide on the back, which is super helpful. So here I have the outline of the two blooms, which are connected together, loaded into my mini MISTI, and I've inked it up with pure graphite ink. I'm going to stamp 2 of those. For the largest bloom, I have the solid stamp. I'm inking that in Peach Perfect. And then for the smaller bloom, I'm going to stamp that in Sand Dunes. This will keep us in line with the Inspiration Challenge color palette, but it gives you a couple different options in case you don't have Peach Perfect, but you have kind of a tan color, and it gives us a little bit of interest and difference between the two blooms. For the detail layer, I stamped one of them in Coral Berry, I'll stamp the other in Cotton Candy, and then I'll switch those two up for the smaller blooms as well, again just to have some variation. If I wanted to get a little bit of a darker color but still stay peach, then I just stamped it more than once. Once the stamping was complete, I die cut the images with the coordinating dies, and for the center I used Silverstone for the small dots around, and then in the center I used pure graphite, which I think was a little dark, but in the end it works with our dark bubble wrap stencil. For the leaves, I've stamped the outline layer and the detail layer in Industrial Diamond Crest ink. I omitted the solid layer, and then I'll go ahead and get those die cut with the coordinating dies. I wasn't sure what color sentiment I wanted, so I die cut Bold Greetings die set with out of a few different colors of coral cardstock, then black and white. Ultimately, I decided on white, but when I do this, rather than waste these pieces that I've already cut, I'm just going to stack them together. Now, because they're in coordinating colors, it's going to add a nice design element when you look at it from the side. It's just a little extra something, and then you haven't wasted the work and effort you've put into cutting those dies. So I'll get those stacked up. And then I went ahead and stamped What's Up on some coral cardstock, cut that into the strip. And then for my flowers, I popped those up on a piece of sticky back fun foam that I die cut with the same coordinating die. I'm just putting some Derice foam strips behind the letters, and they fit perfectly. It's like the perfect width. And then to finish off this card, we'll add some satin weight sequins. Now, I am in love with these sequins, you guys. There's 3 colors. Satin white, satin gold, and antique gold, and they're all just the perfect shades. I feel like they go with any of your cards. Here you can see that nice detail element of the different colors stacked together. I love the texture of this black embossing paste that we created with the reinkers, and I really like how this card came together. For the second card, I stamped the blooms with Industrial Diamond, and I omit the solid layer and go straight to the detail layer, the large bloom in Coral Berry, the small bloom in Peach Perfect. I'll go ahead and die cut that out and arrange it with the leaves that I die cut in the previous step. I have a sentiment here from the original sentiment strip stamp set. Remembering the stacked rocks from the inspiration photo, I decided to cut this sentiment strip and stack it like the rock. So I'll get those popped up on some foam strips. And I love the texture and the color that was achieved with the embossing paste and the reinkers. I hope this opens your mind up to the possibilities and the color spectrum. Any of your colors can be used to color your embossing paste, whether you want a light color or a really dark saturated color. You can get there with your white embossing paste. We'd love to see what you're creating. Be sure to enter your projects into the Altenew April 2020 Inspiration Challenge. I'll have a link down below. And if you share on social media, tag us at Altenew and myself at Notable Ink. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you real soon with more inspiration. Subscribe, like, and ring that bell so you don't miss any new inspiration.